Newly invented baby products are being tested on your own kids in your own home. That's because in most cases, new children's products can hit the market without much oversight or testing, and the risk of potentially dangerous toys are only found after there are real problems with real babies. Factfinder investigator Lee Zurich reports.
A mom.
The alarm bells were ringing very early on, and it was just ignored.
A pediatrician.
Babies died in those products, but it took thousands of sales for these things to pop up.
And a senator.
There were deaths and injuries that could have been prevented.
3 people with one concern: how baby products end up on the market and in our homes.
You wouldn't think that someone would be able to put something on the market that could potentially kill our infants, and the reality is that absolutely is the case.
For all 3, they can't talk about what's going on today without talking about what happened 5 years ago when the Fisher-Price Rock and Play was finally recalled, but only after around 100 babies died in the incline sleeper, with reports spanning years.
I just really struggle to understand how we aren't taking what we should have learned from that and applying it.
The concern has to do with the process. In the United States, products like toys and blankets and baby clothes go to market without the government's approval. Regulations and standards, in fact, typically come in after a product is already on the shelves. But what that means is instead of a scientific setup before thousands of products are made and sold, homes are the labs, parents the scientists, babies the test subjects. An impromptu home study that might turn tragic.
Parents in general, they think that all of these products have been approved by a governing body, like the FDA does for medications. And there is nothing like that.
And if there are safety standards, they're often initially voluntary, meaning companies choose whether to follow them. And they're often set through independent organizations. In the case of baby products, that's ASTM International, which hosts dozens and dozens of committees of experts, consumers, and industry insiders who decide the best and safest ways to manufacture products we all use every day. But that process is now facing fire. Critics say it has too much industry influence, reacts slowly, and relies too heavily on death tallies for action.
And then the data that then they use to make decisions are the number of dead children or injuries, accidents that have happened. And so it's a very reactive process rather than proactive.
Shayna Rayfield lost her daughter Claire in a safe sleep incident at daycare. She's now in the committee considering safety standards for infant sleepwear, where weighted sleepwear is currently in debate for voluntary industry standards. The current task, counting incidents possibly tied to the product.
In my head, I'm like, so what's your number? So what number of children that have died would then meet the threshold for some of these manufacturers to actually consider it a hazard?
While many major retailers have already pulled weighted sleep sacks after various warnings, they remain on the market and legal. Now Senator Richard Blumenthal and other lawmakers have proposed a ban.
I don't want to see a repeat of the Rock and Play debacle, where there were deaths and injuries that could have been prevented, but the sales went on much too long, and we see the same kind of dangers here. Children, infants may be at risk.
We've asked ASTM International for interviews. Every request has been declined. While the mom, the pediatrician, and the senator continue to push for changes for children's safety, Shayna remains on the ASTM committee and continues to voice her concerns for the process and what could happen if things don't change.
The end goal should be safety. It shouldn't be, let's make sure all these products can get on the market and we don't have too many regulations. It should be safety. That's the point of safety standards.
And even with new inventions, there are some broad federal regulations that everyone would have to comply with, even if a new product isn't specifically regulated. For example, there are flammability laws for children's clothing and sleepwear and lead paint restrictions for kids' toys and furniture. Once a specific regulation is set for children's or a children's product, companies must use government-approved labs for testing. If you have a story, we want to hear from you. Call or email our investigators at the address right there on your screen. We'll look into any of your issues for the next Factfinder Investigates.